Something strange just happened in El Salvador. The first country to make Bitcoin legal tender just canceled its Bitcoin law. Some headlines say the IMF crushed Bukele's experiment. Others say it was a strategic compromise. We go backstage at Bitcoin MENA with the founder of El Salvador's first Bitcoin economy to ask the question nobody's asking. Did El Salvador ever need a Bitcoin law in the first place? Let's mine deep. When El Salvador passed the Bitcoin law in 2021, the establishment freaked out. Credit rating agencies downgraded the country to junk status. The IMF called it reckless. The media said Bukele was turning the nation into a crypto casino. But despite the panic, the country didn't collapse. In fact, by 2024, El Salvador had clawed its way back. Bonds rebounded, crime plummeted, and investment surged. And all that Bitcoin that Bukele bought for the country, it's up over $100 million in profit. But despite the good news, El Salvador still faces pressing financial challenges. The nation grapples with a high debt projected to peak at 85% in 2024. To address this, Bukele's government sought external assistance, leading to a $1.4 billion loan agreement with the International Monetary Fund. As part of the agreement, the government rewrote its Bitcoin policy. Businesses no longer have to accept Bitcoin. The government wallet, Chivo, is getting privatized. And apparently, at some point in the future, El Salvador will be barred from buying Bitcoin for its own strategic reserve. Although that last part, Bukele said, might not be stopping. But this is where you have to ask, why did Bukele even turn to the IMF in the first place? 1.4 billion isn't much compared to what's already flowing in El Salvador. Google is setting up a massive cloud project. Tether is investing millions and moving its headquarters to San Salvador. Private capital is pouring in from thousands of expats moving there every year. Could Bukele not have gotten the funding elsewhere without IMF strings attached? Or was this about something bigger? Maybe taking the IMF loan wasn't about the money. Maybe it was about maintaining broader investor confidence, keeping traditional markets happy, and playing the geopolitical game on your own terms. Rejecting the IMF outright could have made El Salvador a full-blown financial pariah, something even Bitcoin adoption couldn't shield it from. In this deal, the IMF gets its symbolic concessions and Bukele secures another bridge loan. So why should you care? Because this isn't just about El Salvador. It's about whether any nation can truly break free from the global financial system. The IMF didn't stop El Salvador from using Bitcoin. It just removed the mandate. But did the mandate ever matter? Was forcing businesses to accept Bitcoin the real victory? Or was it always about clearing barriers and letting adoption grow naturally? Projects like Cuba Plus and Bitcoin Beach are still thriving in 2025. New circular economies like Bitcoin Berlin are seeing merchant adoption grow from 200 to 300% per year. The grassroots movement isn't slowing down. Bukele played the game. He took the IMF's money, made concessions, and walked away with a stronger economy and a Bitcoin brand still intact. Maybe that was the smart move. Or maybe, by signing the deal, he gave the IMF exactly what it wanted. Proof that no country can fully rogue and survive without the blessing of the financial overloads. So here's the real question. Does a country need a Bitcoin law to be a Bitcoin country? Or is true monetary freedom something governments can't grant or take away? I'll leave that for you to decide. Now, join me backstage at Bitcoin MENA with Mike Peterson.
I need to know your story. Like, how did you end up in El Salvador? Because you're from America.
Yeah, originally from California, went to El Salvador on a surf trip and just fell in love with it. The people there, there's just real unique warmth to the Salvadoran people. Even when the country was gang-ridden and the security was bad, the people were very friendly. And so I kind of just fell in love with the country, warm water, good waves. And so I told my wife, okay, we got to come back and buy a place. So we came back a month later and bought a house, and that was in 2004. And so that's eventually Bitcoin Beach came out of that. We were doing initiatives in El Zonte with the local youth, really trying to keep them from joining the gang. And we had somebody that saw what we were doing and said, hey, can we be a part of this? And we want to donate Bitcoin to you to help. And I was a Bitcoiner at the time, so I was like, okay, I'd never thought about integrating Bitcoin into what we're doing. And so came back to them with a proposal of starting a circular Bitcoin economy, and thought that that would just bring a lot of benefits and opportunity to the local youth there. And so that's how it all started.
Everybody goes to El Salvador to go visit Bitcoin Beach. Did you see all of that from the minute that you started to create Bitcoin Circular Economy?
So the funny thing is, when we had the idea to do this, I just assumed that there was other communities doing it. And so we went to the BitConf, and it was in Uruguay that year, Latin American Bitcoin Conference. And I thought, well, we'll find out where all the other circular Bitcoin economies are, and then we'll just replicate what they're doing. And we showed up, and they're like, no, you guys are the only one doing anything. And so that was kind of this like, oh, shoot, maybe if nobody else is doing it, it's not possible. But we already committed at that point. And so we just decided to push forward, and we made mistakes along the way. Originally, we tried to start with the adults because we felt like, oh, it's, we're dealing with money and economics, so we'll start with the adults. And we quickly realized it was the kids that caught on quicker. And that was almost by accident. We started paying the local kids to, clean the river, to clean the beaches, mostly just trying to keep them out of trouble, keep them out of the gangs, give them something positive to do. And we started paying them in Bitcoin. And we realized for them, it was just like, yeah, of course, we do everything else on our phones, so why wouldn't we transact on our phones? So then we kind of shifted gears and started focusing on the youth. And the youth actually then can help their parents and grandparents understand how to use it. And so it was, and when we started, we were actually doing all our transaction on chain because Lightning was not really ready. And so it was just perfect timing right when on-chain fees started to skyrocket. Lightning started to become more usable. And so we switched over to using Lightning in 2020.
You started Bitcoin Beach. How did El Salvador, the Bukele, get involved into the whole thing? Because that played a huge role. But you came first. Like, you were either the chicken or the egg, but you came first. And then you have Nayib Bukele, which made Bitcoin a legal tender. And then the rest, obviously, is history. But how does that play out?
So we, early on, really tried to reach out to the government because we didn't want them to hear rumors like, oh, there's Bitcoin, and, people at that time, especially then, people thought drug money or money laundering. And so we embraced, reached out to them and said, hey, this is what we're doing in the community. This is how we can think it could help El Salvador. We had a number of meetings with the Minister of the Economy because we live, El Zonte's with Minister of Tourism, because El Zonte is a tourist destination. And so we were trying to show her, hey, by adopting Bitcoin, it'll attract Bitcoiners from around the world, but also it'll attract all this media. They'll be very interested in this crazy, plan to adopt Bitcoin. And so early on, we pushed on the government that, hey, if you adopt Bitcoin, you can change the whole narrative about El Salvador. And, we know that Nayib Bukele, he likes to see himself in the newspapers. He likes he's very good at publicity. So we knew he would understand the opportunity that came with that. And so we said, hey, look, if you guys make Bitcoin legal tender, you already don't have your own currency. You've already adopted the dollar, so you don't have to worry about that. If you adopt Bitcoin as legal tender, he will go down in the history books. Nobody will ever be able to take that away from him. And so we just kind of kept having these meetings with the government and just showing, hey, this is why we think this would be hugely helpful to the country and at a very low cost.